are higher dimensional beings trying to speak with us right now?
This is a global diplomatic initiative between humans and these very advanced civilizations from other star systems. We make contact with them and then invite them to interact with us. So these civilizations have been around for hundreds of thousands, millions of years. They know the trajectory. They know that we need a course correction. If you are advanced enough to travel faster than the speed of light under controlled circumstances and go from one star system to here, you have technologies that if you are hostile, you could terminate all human civilization in a nanosecond, and they have not.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to speak with higher dimensional beings, then do we have the Dr. Stephen M. Greer show for you. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Stephen M. Greer, a leading UFO expert, founder of the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, CSETI, and the Disclosure Project, and the creator of numerous extraterrestrial documentaries on helping us find out the truth about ETs. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, how to communicate with higher dimensional beings and why it's more important now than ever. Plus, stay tuned to the end where we're going to do a guided meditation so you can call in higher dimensional beings and ETs right now. So welcome to the show, Stephen. Are you ready to shine?
Sure, let's do it.
Woohoo! All right. Before we dive right into things, let's go back to the 40s for a second. Let's go back to the 40s and 50s. And then I want to look at Hollywood for a brief moment. It's interesting that you call it, close encounters. So actually, the two key things that I want to talk about is first off, what happened at Roswell? And then secondly, was the movie Close Encounters of, I believe, was the third kind based on something true?
Yes, well, Roswell was not the first, but it's the most famed crash retrieval of an interstellar vehicle. And it was downed by an advanced electromagnetic weapon that was hidden in a radar dome. We have an FBI document written to J. Edgar Hoover from a field agent saying so. And that, by the way, when we released it, has become the number one viewed document on the FBI website by far. So that event led to a very intensive project headed up by Dr. Vannevar Bush, who had headed up the Manhattan Project, the atomic bomb project, to get to the bottom of the modus operandi, to quote a document from Canada, top secret. In other words, the mechanism of how these craft operate, their energy system, their propulsion system, teleportation systems, all of it. So began sort of the modern era in the 40s in the wake of, and of course in the backyard of the atomic bomb program, because at the time, people don't know this, Roswell was the only atomic bomb storage facility on Earth. No other nation had the bomb, and that was the only place where we stored ones that were operational. And that's why the ETs were so concerned, because it's not only something that could destroy all life on Earth, but as I mentioned, when you detonate one, it actually rips the fabric of the universe and is destructive way out beyond the Earth and beyond our solar system on these other dimensions. Because remember, we see our physicists have described a certain level of the cosmos, and now they're describing, dark energy and dark matter and other realms and other dimensions. In reality, when you detonate an atomic bomb or hydrogen bomb, worse, there is a pulse that goes out that's beyond the speed of light. That's not just the electromagnetic pulses. So the ETs were very, very concerned about this, obviously.
Quick question. It's a big picture question that's going to take us off on a tangent. I want to bring us back. Are all ETs, they've made it through this time period. Are they operating more out of a place of benevolence or a place of love? Why wouldn't an ET, I'm not coming from a place of fear, but say, we need to stop this and we need to do whatever it takes so that the Earthlings don't hurt others?
That's a big problem. And because you're dealing with, contrary to the mythology of this issue. And by the way, I'd say the closest movie in Hollywood ever done on the subject that's accurate was Steven Spielberg's, I know his son, Max, The Close Encounters of the Third Kind. It was a docudrama. And actually, when it was shown at the Reagan White House in the theater, I know 3 people who were there who stood up and said, at the end, Reagan stood up and said, there are very few people in this room who know how true to life this is. But now remember, Mr. Spielberg got access from files at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where the remains of the craft and bodies from the Roswell event went. And he was also advised by Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who had been head of Project Blue Book, which was the Air Force research effort back in the 60s and whatnot on the UFO issue. And so many of those cases, even though it was a Hollywood production and fiction, it was based on actual events that had happened, including the telepathic part of it. And so that's quite interesting. Now, just so people know the phyla or the categories, a close encounter of the first kind is a sighting at a pretty close range. A close encounter of the second kind is when something leaves physical evidence, radar or lands on the ground, leaves a trace, metal, whatever. A close encounter of the third kind is the sighting of an extraterrestrial biological entity, or EBIN, as they're called in the intelligence community. A close encounter of the fourth kind is when someone has an experience and they go on board a craft. And a close encounter of the fifth kind is a term that I created in 1990 to describe humans. It's the first active category where humans initiate or invite the event and invite the contact to happen. So that's where it's a really order of magnitude more significant, because the others are all kind of passive human observational or experience. This is when humans actually consciously take an overt step to invite communication and contact for a higher purpose, for the purpose of creating universal peace on Earth and in space. Now, obviously, one of the big problems with this whole subject is that it's 99% mythology and disinformation embedded in the pop culture by the intelligence community and the CIA operatives, where they portray the ETs as these scary aliens and this and that, like the movie Alien. Now, the reality is, anybody who has a scintilla of scientific knowledge would confirm this very quickly. If you are advanced enough to travel faster than the speed of light under controlled circumstances and go from one star system to here, which all of these civilizations are, they're not indigenous to our solar system. You have technologies that if you were hostile, you could terminate all human civilization in a nanosecond, literally. And they have not. Now, why have they not? Well, the Earth is considered a very cherished place. They see the future of humanity as being very potentially beautiful. They know there's many aspects of humans that are very spiritual, beautiful, creative. And this planet is actually what we call it a destination planet. It's so unbelievably beautiful and diverse in life that it's much loved in the cosmos, much loved. So they're being very patient, waiting for humans to mature and grow up. The problem is the timeline. When you reach the nuclear threshold and beyond, covert programs have technologies way beyond nuclear, significantly. And you haven't developed spiritually and socially to match the technology. That's when the technology can then become bent to the purpose of war, bent to the purpose of conflict and destruction, which is when a civilization is precisely at an inflection point where it either has to evolve to a peaceful civilization or it will terminate. And other worlds have had that happen. There's good evidence that happened on Mars. Ancient civilizations on Earth may have come this way before us and reached the nuclear threshold and not become peaceful and were destroyed. There's reason to believe in the Vedas that there were accounts that in India that such an event took place that wiped out civilization. So these civilizations have been around for hundreds of thousands, millions of years. They know the trajectory. They know that we need a course correction. So, I'm an emergency and trauma doctor, and I left my career to fix this problem once I was asked to brief the director of the CIA and the president on this some years ago, and found out that the legal constitutional government of the United States has no control over these covert beyond black projects. So then that's led to me starting the Disclosure Project, where we've then now been identifying hundreds and hundreds of top secret witnesses to give information to the public. And the ones who won't do it for the public, I'm putting it together in packages and giving to the investigators who are now under law required to investigate the UFO issue in the last year or two. So I'm passing that information up the chain of command. And they have succeeded in hitting pay dirt. That's all I can say on this call. So that's a very huge project. So those projects are really key. And people go, well, why would all this have been kept secret? It's a lot of it is at the time in 47, they didn't know what they were dealing with. And they knew it was high advanced technology. World War II was over, but the Cold War was ramping up with the Soviet Union. And the technology was, they knew, extraordinary. Now, that program went so black that the people in the White House and the Congress have no control over them. I can say this for a fact, because I'm in Washington half the time and meet with those folks. So I think that we have a situation, it's a huge crisis. So that's why the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, the CE5 Contact initiative, has to be coordinated with efforts with governments around the world to get to the bottom of this and get control over these sort of Frankenstein black projects that are running this issue and are also dangerously targeting ET craft with very advanced electromagnetic weapons and knocking them down. Remember, you don't go from another star system to the desert of New Mexico and can't navigate a thunderstorm. That's the cover story of how that crashed in Roswell. That's not what happened. That was a deliberate targeting and downing of an interstellar vehicle and a reconnaissance vehicle with 4 beings, intelligent beings on it, 3 of whom died, 1 survived.
What happened to the one who survived?
He was interrogated, tortured, and eventually died in about 1951 or 1952. I've interviewed men who have now since deceased who handled him.
Are some of the technologies, transistors, circuits, computer chips?
Those are all spin-offs. So that's one of the funding mechanisms for these covert groups. They can start companies that then make billions, trillions of dollars on the spin-offs. And everyone may know that Colonel Corso wrote a book, Day After Roswell, where he described that technology transfer program. And he was involved in a very small part of it. I have dozens and dozens of people now on my team who've worked over the years from many corporations, Lockheed, Northrop Grumman, General Electric, Booz Allen Hamilton, SAIC. They all have very covert beyond black projects. But remember, the U.S. tax dollars have been funding them. But then the technology spin-offs are seized by corporatized entities that have a very sort of fascist bent, frankly. And they, of course, made enormous wealth. So you have multiple avenues of revenue. You have the privatization and corporatization of the technology, and you have, basically the embezzlement of, at least at this point, somewhere between $8 and $10 trillion that have gone into these projects. In fact, Donald Rumsfeld, remember, right before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld admitted, and we have this on videotape, he admitted that there was $2.3 trillion unaccounted for in the Department of Defense budget, with a T. All right, so this is not a conspiracy theory. These are facts. The mainstream media almost never reports on it because the media is the only more corrupt entity than this cabal of sociopaths running these programs. They are certainly more corrupt than the politicians. I would say there are no politicians I've ever briefed as corrupt as the media people and the big tech companies.
Are higher dimensional beings trying to speak with us right now?
Well, I mean, first of all, because I'm very specific. I'm a doctor, so we use very specific language for clarity. What we're doing are involving specific project, a diplomatic project, using advanced concepts in higher consciousness to communicate with extraterrestrial biological entities from other star systems. There are beings from higher dimensions, celestial, angelic, what have you, which also assists with that at times, but that's very different from an ET civilization that is flesh and blood, 3D, who transverse other dimensions to go from point A to B. So one of the problems with this subject, I wrote a paper in 1995 called ETs and the New Cosmology, and it's the conflation of all things people don't understand, calling them the same thing. So like all things, it's important to be specific. So what we're doing with what's called Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and I think some of your viewers may have seen the documentary. You can see it free now on Amazon Prime and Tubi and Hulu and Pluto or wherever, is training people to make contact with these civilizations. And we're using consciousness and higher consciousness because these civilizations have technologies that interface with coherent thought. Now, in the process of doing that, often we will have interactions with beings from other higher dimensions that are not extraterrestrial. But there needs to be an understanding of what we're specifically doing. And this is a global diplomatic initiative between humans and these very advanced civilizations from other star systems. So it is not a project that is aimed at primarily contacting intelligent beings from other higher dimensions, such as celestial, but that happens as a consequence naturally because the universe is an integrated quantum hologram that's conscious. So that when you contact, and when you're in that state of consciousness of non-locality, expanded infinite mind, you're going to be able to see and interact with ETs and communicate, but also you will often see and communicate with beings that are in another higher dimension. But that's an incidental event from the specific purpose of Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. So it's not one of these things where, we're saying, and first of all, we don't call them because that implies that they're servants on our beck and call. It's a diplomatic process. So the language we like to use is respectful of these civilizations. Whereas if you call a servant, you call them in. No, this is like you would do that for the chief steward on Air Force One if you're the president. That's not the dynamic. The dynamic is very much diplomatic, respectful. So we never call them in, ever. We make contact with them and then invite them to interact with us. And when you see the photos and images of which you can see in the film, of all the encounters we've had with these beings from other star systems who are traversing through other dimensions to get here. I mean, we can talk about this. It's very much in the context of a higher consciousness and from the mind and the heart resonating as one, but it's done in this spirit of cooperation and respect rather than sort of like dolphins at SeaWorld where we, call them and jump through a hoop for us. So I'm willing to be really specific because this is a big problem. If people go out with that mindset, the ETs don't come because it's disrespectful. So we want to be very respectful.
Thank you. So let's make sure, and in fact, I have questions about what we're calling them later on that we're going to go to. I definitely want to be very respectful. Why is this a diplomatic mission, and why specifically is the aim to contact biological beings? And I'm guessing in other dimensions or universes or maybe even timelines. Why them? Why?
Well, because what people call a UFO are two separate objects. First of all, there are the ones that are of extraterrestrial origin, that are ETs from another planetary system that have spacecraft. Let's remember, angels and celestial beings don't need a flying saucer or a craft like that. So, this is why we're very, very specific. It's not to exclude that because it's all part of a comprehensive, holistic paradigm. But the reason that's so important is that as we began to detonate atomic and nuclear weapons, the entire universe tilted, because when you detonate one of those weapons, it rips the fabric of space and time, not just on Earth, but everywhere, because it sends out a pulse that's faster than the speed of light, scalar, longitudinal, and it damages the sort of superhighway of interstellar communication and travel. So that's why in the 40s and 50s, there was this huge surge of planetary civilizations concerned about the Earth. That has led to an enormous problem with the classified projects in the US government and elsewhere mismanaging the relationship. And this is why the whole CE5 Contact, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, Contact initiative is a citizens' diplomacy effort to repair and advance in a positive direction the relationship between humans on Earth and these ETs that are from other star systems, of which there are thousands of them, different species, from different planetary systems. So that's a big undertaking, because if you go to the United Nations or the State Department or the Foreign Ministry of whatever country you're in, there is no such project doing this. So we're feeling like there has to be a pioneering effort that's guided by higher consciousness and principles of universal peace to make contact and to show these civilizations that there are enlightened and peaceful people here on Earth. So that's the specific purpose of Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. And we have an app, CE5 Contact, which you may have, and it's an app that trains you in this whole process. So that's very important. And again, we do often have experiences with beings from other dimensions that aren't corporeal. In other words, they're not physical biological entities. They're in bodies of light and what have you. And the other thing to remember, an ET civilization that's very advanced can go from point A to B in the physical cosmos and appear around the Earth or in your backyard as sort of a light being, almost like a hologram. So there's an entire, in which we don't have time to in a short discussion like this. But this is why what we're doing in September, for those who want to come on the 16th, 17th, and 18th in Arizona, out on Native American land, we're going to do a mass meditation and contact event that is open to the public, and people can't be there physically. We're going to live stream it. And one of those nights, the last night, we're going to be way out in the desert and do this, and to train people, but also to send a mass wave in higher consciousness through the cosmos, letting these civilizations know that humans are preparing to enter into a time where we're going to become interstellar civilizations. So that's very exciting. And that is an event that, you can, hopefully you have a link where people can find out how to come. But that's going to be in September 16th, 17th, 18th. And what we want to do with these sort of 3-day programs is train people to become ambassadors to the universe from humanity who understand the details of this, because understanding the cosmology, the technologies, the science of consciousness, the techniques of contact, how to set up a team, how to document it, how to communicate when they do appear. I mean, this is really a complex process.
When we start, it's a dangerous term to use, democratizing, what a slippery slope, democratizing our ability to communicate with ETs. When we do that, does that create, just as much as there's scalar waves, does that create the equivalent of a scalar wave across this planet to shift consciousness to where we're not stuck in this matrix where we don't even know that we're not free of what's going on?
Bingo. And that's the power of meditation together. The studies that have been done, I mean, before I was a medical doctor, I was a meditation teacher and went all over the world setting up meditation centers. Mainly Vedic, but some Buddhist breath meditation, and Sanskrit, mantra meditation. But what I found was, and the studies were done back in the 60s and 70s. And then there were follow-on studies done by Dr. John at Princeton, an engineering lab, where they showed that people in consciousness and meditative states, they not only elevate their own vibration, resonance, consciousness, but it affects everyone around them that they don't even know. And that if you get about 1% of a population of a city, say, if you have 200,000 people in a town, if you have 2,000 people meditating and doing it regularly, and particularly when they sync up together, it alters everyone else so that crime rates go down, emergency department, my field of visits go down, coherence goes up. So the way the world can advance, I'm trying to, create this ability for millions of people to join us, like we're going to do in Arizona in September, where we sync up people's meditative state all together, and with a specific outcome of peaceful contact with these civilizations, but also transforming the earth into a place of peace. Because that's going to happen in the heart and higher consciousness most effectively, more so than intellect and institutions. Now, in the meanwhile, we have these wild, rabid dogs that need to be, watched, who have these covert programs and technologies that have been misusing them, which is why I do the work I do in Washington and elsewhere. But the central purpose of what my organization was founded for was CE5 Contact and the mass consciousness effect. And the studies on this are really quite elegant. And even they found that with random number generators, like Dr. John at Princeton had, if one person puts their mind on it, you can shift the quantum computer to put out more ones than zeros or more zeros than ones. But if two people that love each other are doing it, it actually is an exponential. And so this human love factor and higher consciousness and working together is how things shift on an exponential level. And so, you look at the planet, 1% of the planet's population to be 75 million people. And if 75 million people began to, which isn't that many out of 7.5 billion people, began to meditate and do these sort of programs, the world would actually go through what's called a phase transition, where it suddenly goes from chaos to peace and order. And that's the power of meditation together, combined with love of one another.
Do you feel that's why on so many levels it seems like it's an orchestrated pushback? We've got the military who's in theory making things public at this time and going, please give us money so that we can look at this. Please, we want to keep people safe. And there's such this strife and division that I feel is being fed to us through the media, let's being honest, to keep us from the path that we're on, because it seems like we're getting closer to that 75 million. And so there's more of a pushback.
Yeah, there's a huge pushback because they know that there are two big trends happening. There are now millions of people doing CE5 Contact. The app is in the top 10 apps in the world for educational apps and has been for 2 solid years. With no staff. We have no staff. We have no marketing team. We have no budget. So that's phenomenal. I mean, that's a tech story right there if you're a tech person. How does this happen? Well, it's because people understand how important. And then there have been a lot of celebrity supporters like Chris Brown and Demi Lovato and other people who Ariana Grande and others who are very big supporters of what we're trying to achieve. But I think that it's really a grassroots viral phenomenon of consciousness rising. But as we have done the documentary Unacknowledged, exposing these corrupt projects, and then have millions of people beginning to do Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, CE5 Contact, they have raced frantically to put out all the false information. So what you'll see in the media and from certain people who've surfaced out of the intelligence community in the UFO culture is this is a national security threat. And we don't know what these things are, and they're a threat to the national security. Well, I assure people, the only ones that are a threat to the national security are the man-made ones coming out of the desert that are ours, masquerading as alien craft. That is a threat to the national security. And guess what? The top people in Washington at the national security level and congressional oversight level, Pentagon, they don't know that. What I just shared with you in meetings, they really have no idea how this is going on. It's that out of control. Even the people who manage the black budget of the United States aren't read into or briefed on that. So I think this is a big problem. So we have to be mindful of both. We need to raise consciousness and make contact. At the same time, we disclose the issue. Now, I'm going to announce here, nobody knows this. I'm in the middle of a meeting here at my farm in Virginia, near Thomas Jefferson's house, University of Virginia, to start on a epic 2-hour feature film that's going to feature the energy and propulsion devices and explain how the world will be transformed. And we actually are going to be showing not only the history of 100, I call this the lost century. There's 100 years of technology that and social and spiritual evolution that we've lost because of the secrecy. And in the meanwhile, we're destroying the biosphere. So people are arguing in two camps: solar panels and windmills, or drill more oil and gas. And we're in an energy crisis now, an inflationary crisis. The truth is both sides are right and wrong. There's not enough energy density with solar and wind to run 8 billion, 7 billion people. We can't even, if everyone drove a Tesla car, you would have massive blackouts of the power grid. Absolutely. States are already telling people don't charge your car certain hours because the grid's going to go down. So how do we fix this? Well, the good news, very good news for you people, younger people in particular, who are very hopeless. The technology that runs a UFO, where's that energy coming from? There's no oil, jets, gas. So I tell people, look at CNN or 60 Minutes, CBS, or of our Navy guys chasing that Tic Tac, that UFO off the coast of California. Forget all the baggage of UFOs and ETs. Just look at it in a different way for a second. It's an alternative energy and propulsion system. It's not using any nuclear, fossil fuel, or wind or solar. What is that? That's what has to come out now. So that's the next big thing we're working on. And this Lost Century film is about the lost century and how we regain it, reclaim it, and what I call a time snap, where in 10 years, we catch up on the lost 100.
So I've got to ask, and I've read your work. Are you in danger with the work that you do, and have you been attacked?
Yes and yes. Very seriously. Yeah, and the guys that I'm now working with in Washington who have been charged with getting to the bottom of this, they're in mortal danger, have been threatened. You know, we've all been put on the watch group list, which is the kill list, the watch list. Doesn't bother me. I have folks who are protective of what we're doing that have enormous resources. And ultimately, I just turned 67. I have expecting our 12th grandkid. I'm not so concerned about my own welfare. I'm more concerned about what planet are we leaving to your children your child that was just born, and all my grandchildren, and the thousands, of generations yet unborn. Remember, the time we live in is the closure of this one yuga, that's old age, the Kali, the opening of an age of enlightenment. But people don't realize the last yuga, 450,000 years, is closing. But the one that's opening, that we're in the middle of this turbulent time, is 500,000 years of unbroken peace, interstellar travel, higher states of consciousness. But we're at this very risky time where if we don't get this right in the next few years, then we're going to miss that window. So it's when I say that it's very urgent. This is what propelled me. Knowing this is what made me leave my medical career. Now, obviously, I mean, It is a very dangerous thing. Anyone doing it at this level, with where you're actually, I'm arming the people who are investigating this, who are the good guys in government, to penetrate these projects, and they have done so. And that this is a big story that nobody, I can't go into much detail on, that's happened in the last few months. But what it means is that it also means you have a situation where these covert groups could become even more vicious. But that's why we need everyone's prayer and protection, in that state, and that's something everyone can do.
I hadn't planned on going in this direction, but it's screaming at me now. Lemoyne from Google, Lambda, AI. What does this have to do with anything?
Well, I mean, all of those systems are, if you know about it publicly, they're sort of a faint version of what's been done covertly. So just remember, if it's anywhere on the internet and anywhere in the news and, Wired magazine, what have you, it's, at least 20 to 50 years behind.
Sort of like a popular mechanics or a popular science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but remember that trillions of dollars going into programs, and some of the most brilliant physicists and engineers I've ever met spend their whole lives working in a SCIF, a secure communication information facility underground. And, at the Lockheed Skunk Works or at the Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, and all over. And unfortunately, that brain drain has gone into these covert programs. Meanwhile, they estimate 3 billion people on Earth that don't have gas or electricity to cook with, and they're cutting down all the forests. 3 billion. That was the last report that was in The Economist. So you have 3 billion people who don't even have literally a pot to pee in or any way to cook their food. And we're still living like halfway out of the cave. And yet in these covert programs, the technologies are sitting there that could literally, as the ET said to Colonel Corso in 1956, a new world, if you can take it. That's how we end Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind documentary, where is this story of Colonel Corso having this encounter with the ET. And he says, "What's in it for me?" Being a very kind of brash young Air Force colonel. And the ET turns to him and says, "A new world, if you can take it." Just like that.
So a few more questions. I want to round the bend back into some positive territory here, and then let's do a meditation if we can to help people with contact. I did an ayahuasca ceremony, I don't know, close to a decade ago, where I called in extraterrestrials, and suddenly the sky was filled with layer after layer after layer of spacecraft. And I said, "What in the world are you doing?" And they said, "We're here to protect you. It is a thankless job. You could kill yourself off basically at any time, at any moment. We are here to keep you safe." And it makes me think of, I don't know if it's common culture, but things like, and I wonder if they're real, the Cuban Missile Crisis. And was the button pressed? And are there beings literally trying to keep us alive and keep our pulse going till we can round the bend?
Yes, that is a main part of what they call the mission to planet Earth. And it's completely accurate. Our experience in contact is that they're very much here to restrain the worst aspects, to protect the Earth, but also other star systems, but also to give us time so that we can get this right. So we're buying time, but there's only so much time you can buy when the way we're living on the Earth. I'm 5/16 Native American, Cherokee, and we are killing our Mother Earth. I mean, we are killing it, literally killing it, ocean, land, water, air, all of it. So they know this, the ETs know this, and one of their big messages that comes through over decades is their concern about weapons of mass destruction and war and the environment. Now, ironically, the technologies that have been kept suppressed that we want to feature in this next feature film, we're going to prove these technologies exist. We're going to prove how they've been suppressed. But then we're going to lay out a very positive vision of a path to bring them out in the next year or two. And then within 10 to 20 years, have a totally different world. So that is a huge undertaking. And obviously, fraught because there are a lot of people who've discovered these technologies who have been assassinated, frankly. And we know that. But, as an emergency doctor, I've taken care of people killed over a 50-cent beer. I've taken care of unbelievable things over trivialities. I always tell people, this is, of such great significance that we need to have people who are willing to walk the talk here. Luckily, we do have people like that, both in and out of government that we're working with now. And so, but all your listeners can help through prayer, meditation, doing CE5, contributing to our crowdfunding campaigns when we launch them. All of these documentaries, by the way, and Unacknowledged has had 760 million people see it. No corporation funded it. It was all done through crowdfunding donations through our site. So I encourage people to help us do that. It's all been a labor of love. And even to this day, 30 years into this project, we have no office and no staff. Everyone's a volunteer and everything goes into the mission. So that's really a beautiful story in and of itself, because we don't want to get corrupted by corporate and government interests. Now remember, in 1992, the head of Army intelligence personally offered me, and then went behind my back to my wife, $2 billion if I would stop what I was doing and be a traitor to the human race and join their group. He offered me a board seat on the covert group. And that's when $2 billion was a lot of money. It's still a lot. It would be $5 billion now. So I tell people, you have to be, this is a spiritual thing. What are your values? What do you really care about? Money, power, all that? No, you have to care about something larger, higher consciousness, enlightenment, a civilization on Earth that can take its place with others. It's very beautiful what needs to happen. But the only way it happens, it's not going to happen from the president or the prime minister on down. All these big changes happen from the grassroots, which is why programs like yours are so important, to get the word out, because that's how people learn. Because they're not going to get this from CBS or the New York Times or CNN or Fox or any of them. They're going to get this way. And thank God we have these sort of programs.
Thank you. So tell me, if you can, what can you tell me about this positive vision of where we can be headed, of how this would look or work, or what we want to put on our heart's intention to walk that path?
Really what we want people to do is to put themselves at service to first doing CE5 Contact, because this is something everyone on Earth can do. You don't have to have contact to the president. And make yourself a sort of a vector, a channel for contact that's peaceful with these civilizations, so that they know that there are people on this planet that aren't just trying to kill them, and that who understand they're here for a very good purpose. The other is to work to network to us. If you have military and government whistleblowers, we have just gotten through in the United States Congress a mechanism to protect those people on this subject, which is big news. So if you know such people, they should contact me yesterday, immediately. And the third is anyone who knows somebody who has one of these energy technologies that are pulling energy from what's called the 0 point or quantum vacuum, please contact about that, because we now have a means to get those out to the public. And if it was legitimate and could be reproduced and tested transparently, so we were clear that it's a legitimate science, we will feature it in this documentary. This next documentary film, we estimate will have around 1 billion people with a B see it.
How do you... These people have to be heroes. We've seen them disappear. How, when we ask them to come forward to you, is there any way to help them?
Oh, yeah. That's what I'm doing now with 3 different groups. If they move forward in a way that they normally have, where they keep the technology secret, they do it on a small scale, Something like this, within a fortnight of it being proven, has to be known by at least 1 billion to 2 billion people. Now, we have the ability to do that through our network of influencers and celebrity artists and stuff. If we had something legit, the world's going to know. Why is that important? Because if the world knows about it and the secret sauce, let's call it, is disclosed, so it's not held back, the people who have the technologies are not a target. They can't be a target. There's no, in other words, once the toothpaste is squeezed out of the tube, this is why the big mistake all these technology people make is that they're trying to treat this area of science and technology like you would a new iPhone or software program and keeping it secret and patented and all that. Huge mistake. That's how you get killed. So there's a very specific strategy to bring these technologies out. It's open sourcing it. It's massive disclosure of it. It's the replication of it and put it in the hands of a number of safe locations. And then it's a massive push to move it through the scientific and university system and the public so that people know that this is not an urban myth, that this is actually a valid technology in physics. That has to be done, though, very quickly, and we have the assets lined up to do it. But the technology holders, here's been the big rub. There was a whole group of them that were killed up in Michigan because they refused to do what I just recommended. Next thing I know, Lord so-and-so, I won't say who it is, calls me up, who was funding that whole effort, and says they're on the run for their lives, this and that. I said, yes, of course, because they have done everything wrong. There's a specific pathway to move these technologies out and not be assassinated. Most people, because they're looking at dollar signs and money, don't understand that GitHub, which is a software, open source software entity, is a multi-billion-dollar company. You don't have to treat, if you manage this in a way where the public doesn't know how it operates and you keep it secret and you keep it small, you're signing your death warrant. Now, I'm going to be very blunt about this because I've seen this personally for 31 years. And I think that one of the things that we have to get serious about is that what is the objective here? If the objective is someone to make a bunch of money, I can hook you up with people who give you $50 million for your prototype right now, and you can retire in splendor. Now, the world's going to die, and your children will die with it. Now, if that's your main object is, it's like Gollum, my precious ring, my ring, and they die with it. If that's your objective, then I can help you. I'll just hook you up with some people who will write a big check, and the technology will vanish. Now, if your objective is actually to help the planet, and in the meanwhile, I'll do very well in the second phase. So phase one, since you asked this question, is open source disclosure of the technology massively, where it cannot be put, the genie can't be put back in the bottle. And I have the ability to do that, no question. Number two, then in phase two, then you productize it. So once the whole world knows how it works, it's like DARPA creating the internet. It's an open source internet, but it has created hundreds of billion-dollar companies, trillion-dollar companies. So you would then at phase two be able to say, okay, now we're going to create this device for this purpose, this device for this purpose. Those can then have intellectual property on them. The mistake everyone makes, and I want to be very clear if anyone's listening who has knowledge of someone with a valid technology like this, is that they're trying to do phase two before they've done phase one, which for most technologies would work. But with this area of science and technology, you're a dead man walking, to be quite blunt with you. So there's a very specific way to do it. Now, convincing people to do that, if they spent 5 or 10 years developing it, put millions of dollars into it, that's hard because they're looking at a ROI, a return on their investment. So now I have a group of people who, if the technology can be proven, then those people could be fully compensated and move forward. So I've been spending a lot of time putting that mechanism together, but now we need to find some people willing to cooperate with the strategy. So
How much, so I teach automatic writing, and in automatic writing, you can go to higher dimensional beings, you can go to extraterrestrials and different civilizations. How much is consciousness herself, whatever we want to call it? I'm gonna use strange words for fun. Beaming us information, coming to us in our automatic writing, in our dreams, in like Richard Dreyfuss driving down the road, piping it into consciousness, and not just one or two individuals, but almost countless individuals on this planet, so that it is like water about to boil. It is starting to percolate up everywhere until it finally bursts through. How much are we being beamed with that information?
All the time. And that's actually been going on since I lived 10 minutes from Dr. Walter Russell, a Swanano Institute, that he's published the Universal One, and he mentored Nikola Tesla. People don't know this. But Dr. Russell was a medical doctor like I am, but he had contact with ETs. And so that's been going on for over 100 years. What you asked is absolutely what's been going on. The problem is the sociopaths and industrial fascists have reconnaissance systems and abilities to scrub and surveil anyone in the world that has such a thing and snap it up, buy it out, put it on a black shelf, kill the person, blow up the lab. Now, that is what I'm saying. Here's an interesting point to think about it. The laws of the universe are universal by definition. Physics, science, it's universal. So if these civilizations have gone point A to B and there's energy systems, then why can't the minds of humans, men and women, acquire the same knowledge? They can and have. The problem, the chokehold, has been the corruption of power and money for 100 years. It isn't that the technologies haven't been coming and coming and coming, but they come and it's like whack-a-mole. They surface, gone. Surface, gone. How do you change that dynamic? That's what I've spent 30 years trying to develop a strategy to do that. And I think we have one. Now, is it a Hail Mary pass? Maybe. Is it a 100% guaranteed outcome? No. If you want a 100% guaranteed outcome, you don't do something this risky. But I'm a risk taker. I'm an adventurer. I mean, I don't mind taking that risk. And I know a lot of the people who've had these technologies are scared. And I tell them, let us do this for you. And you don't have to put your head in the news. I'm happy to have my head in the news. I mean, my head's been in the news since 92 and 93 when I started briefing people like the director of the CIA on this, who were being blocked on this information. And I've been, public enemy for a long time of these. I have really good protection here, this plane, and elsewhere. I'll just say that. Very good. But I don't take it for granted. I mean, I certainly, with the things going on right now that I've described in the last few months, my risk profile has probably gone up 2 orders of magnitude.
I'm an angels and guides kind of guy.
Sure. Well, you have that. We all have that. Everyone has that, but you also need tactical security on this plane. And we have that too. It's a Mexican standoff. Something happens to my group, then these covert programs are going to be, they'll be terminated.
That was my assumption, is that there's a reason.
More than that, I don't want to go into, but yeah, I mean, you don't do something like what I'm doing and not have contingencies.
What does love have to do with this?
All of it. Everything we're doing is based on love and higher consciousness. This is when I died when I was 17, had a near-death experience. I had all the experiences of every higher state of consciousness up and through unity and Brahman consciousness. And then I became a meditation teacher because I was how did this happen after I came back? I didn't, obviously I came back. But what I learned was the entire cosmos is a conscious, unbounded field of perfect love and awareness and being. And everything, every atom, every photon is conscious. And in fact, it's consciousness itself. And we look at the room around us and we see structure. But in a higher state of consciousness, you see it is simultaneously pure consciousness, phasing and resonating. as the room you're in, or your body, or even your individual soul. But at the core, all of it is pure, unbounded, conscious love. And that's a real realization. That's a real state of consciousness.
So to wrap this up, a couple more questions, and then we'll go into a meditation here. How important, if we could listen to this today, and we could be real riled up, and we're taught to fight. And my guess is the answer is not in fight, it's the energy of love. How do we take and Tai Chi this is a higher energy interview of a holy crapness, Stephen. How do we take and Tai Chi, take that energy and turn it around so that we are not coming from, we'll go George Lucas and the dark side. We're not coming from the dark side, but we're instead using the force.
Well, the way to do that is the force is always there, and it's the infinite aspect of ourselves is always there. We have to actualize it. So you have to, in meditation, experience it, but then you have to put it into action. And the putting it into action, I tell people, think of this really little frail guy named Mahatma Gandhi, who, without any violence, overthrew the most powerful empire, the British Empire, and founded modern India. Or, when I was a kid, I grew up in the 50s, 60s in the South, North Carolina, Martin Luther King. Nonviolent, civil disobedience, action, grassroots. And so, there's an element where there was a very deep, a spiritual purpose behind those movements. It didn't come from the top down. Even the Kennedys were resisting the civil rights movement until they couldn't. People don't know that history. And so I, having grown up, being involved with all that, in the 60s and early 70s, in my middle school and high school years, what I saw was that peace and human rights and the development of freedom and the development of higher consciousness, it takes the action, but it can be nonviolent. So this is like the Shambhala Kingdom spirit warrior, where you're in touch with this higher conscious spirit, but you're putting yourself on the line, which, of course, ultimately, both of them were killed. But remember, when Mahatma Gandhi was shot, I had met a couple of women who were with him as young girls from Europe when he died. And they came and did a CE5 with me, and a huge blue sphere appeared with us on the beach in Florida. And they were told to come to the meeting in a lucid dream by Gandhi, who had died decades earlier. And it's a true story, beautiful. And when he was shot, the last thing he did, he turned to the man who shot him and forgave him and went down. So, it's so beautiful. So what is that? That's love, that's forgiveness, it's higher consciousness. So you don't have to capitulate to any violence. Now, you may get angry when you hear about some of these things and what we're doing to the earth unnecessarily. And a certain amount of anger, if it's turned into something positive, is fine, but not violence, because that an eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. So there's a higher level, and I've always said forgiveness is one of the highest expressions of love, because it's easy to love someone you like, but to forgive someone who's harmed, there you go. Now that is another much higher. And one of the things we do when I guide these, like out at the desert in Arizona in September, we're going to do this mass meditation every night. And I always include in it the forgiveness of those who've done these things. That we put love, we send love to these covert programs. We send forgiveness, we send light into their skiffs. And we actively, hundreds of thousands of people doing this together. And I've had people in those communities, those covert groups, tell me they have felt that. And it's a lot of why some of them have defected. So, people are very powerful if they give themselves their birthright of higher consciousness and do it. And it's really quite beautiful what every individual human has. Think of it, every intelligent being, human or otherwise, has folded within their consciousness the entirety of creation and the infinity of pure consciousness. That is literally true. So once you begin to realize who and what each of us are, you can create and you can manifest. But you have to first understand it and believe it, and then you have to put it into action. So those are the steps.
Thank you. So on that note, where can people go to find out more? Where can they go to find your event, your mass gathering coming up? Where can they go to find your everything? Where do you want to send them?
Yeah, we'll go to SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS, like the star system, and disclosure, SiriusDisclosure.com. And there's a way to find out about everything. And also, you can sign up for free to get our newsletters and information. There's no charge to that. And people who want to come in person to the event, you can register there. But if you want to do it virtually, you can also do the whole weekend online. So we're gonna stream the entire event, including the Sunday night out in the desert on Native American, very sacred land, near where there are some amazing petroglyphs of ETs interacting with Native people.
Very, very cool. And any last, before we do a meditation here, what do you want to leave people with?
What I want to leave people with is to see themselves as ambassadors and activists to create a new world, and to view that they, each of you listening, have a community responsibility to create this new world. And it isn't me, and it's not the government, it's all of us together. And so people need to own their responsibility, because if you're on this planet right now, and I jokingly say between the ages of puberty and senility, you really have this sacred obligation to work on these issues, even while you're doing your day job. I mean, I worked on this for years while running a big trauma emergency department and trauma center. So I think, people have to understand why this is such a pressing issue. We're not alone in the universe. They're waiting for us to make contact open and peacefully. The world needs these sciences and technologies, and they need the disclosure of the subject to people in government who aren't fascists, so that the worst elements are, quite frankly, put on a leash, and stop the worst things that they're doing. So I think that everyone has to view themselves and say, what innate gifts, skills, abilities, networks do I have to bring to bear? And if you think you can help us with some of the things I mentioned earlier, just write to the website. There's a contact, and whether you're a technology person or someone with a contact in government, or someone who was in a covert program and now wants to come forward with protection, which we have, legal and otherwise, then now's the time to step forward. If there was ever an opportunity, it's now. I've never seen my 32 years of doing this, I've never seen something like the last 6 months. Meaning the initiatives that I'm working on and the people I'm working with in Washington who have the ability to move this whole thing forward. I've never seen that before in any government, anywhere.
Is it because it's also a more dangerous time?
It's because they, I think, have realized that they've been deceived for 70 years, and there are people waking up that this is real, and that's why they are now reaching out to have us kind of guide them through that system. So I can't say more than that, but it's very, very exciting. It's fraught. I ask people to put us in their prayers and protection. Not just myself, but the whole team. And I can't say who the team is because I can't. But just imagine the people who actually run and should be running anything this sensitive in the government who don't have access. But now we're getting them access. And that is a game changer, my friend. That's a big game changer.
Thank you. Thank you is not a strong enough word, but it's all I've got to play with. So thank you.
The work gets its own thanks.
I would like to do a meditation where we make contact. The question is, those who still come here and those who do not have the technology that they can travel without spacecraft, because there are those that are at that level of technology, but those that still come here and those who we are able to make contact with and then we'll visit, they're heroes, aren't they?
Oh yeah, yeah. They had to accept the assignment to be involved with this planet. Yeah. So it's very dangerous for them, and so that's the other thing. We should be grateful and thankful for their help. Our sort of older brothers and sisters in the cosmos, because it's a very dangerous, as the military would say, theater of operations. Earth is a very dangerous place right now. So it's important that, we do this in a way where we invite them to have contact, but also instead of asking them for something, offer our service to the cosmic order and to the future, and offer our thanks for what they've done to keep things on track, to buy us time. And, as you referred to, there have been a number of nuclear incidents that have been stopped by the ETs that could have led to World War III. We recently had a Russian general describe to us, and it's on our website, in detail, such an event where the ETs went in and stopped a thermonuclear device that was overheating that they weren't aware of, and corrected it so it wouldn't detonate. If it had detonated, it would have been picked up by U.S. sensors and could have triggered World War III because of a nuclear explosion. So I think that, that general went out on a limb and shared that. He was an old Soviet Union era general. And, people need to sign up for our newsletter, because when these things happen, we send an alert, and then people can see what's really going on.
I'm trying not to ask any more questions. I'm just thinking of, I went to Nobel Peace Prize Summit a couple of years ago, which was founded by Gorbachev. And it makes me think of, there may be some leaders who have been here or are here now that have been more enlightened, shall we say, or more, what are your feelings?
They're aware. Yeah, they're very aware. They never want to stick their neck out too far. Remember, the head of any country in the world does not have the power of the group that is running these covert programs. It's a secret government beyond the government. It's transnational. And the technology, the money, the power they have trumps by far anything most generals or admirals at the Pentagon have access to. And this is why I think, I've said this for 30 years, if the people will lead, the leaders will follow. In other words, our leaders, to the extent they know about the issue at all, are terrified. And I'll never forget, 25 years ago in this spring, I was briefing the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, an Admiral Wilson. And later that memo leaked about the meeting. And at the end of the meeting, I asked him for his help. And he said, well, I have learned through my inquiries, because I had given him information so he could find out what was going on. He was threatened personally, and was threatened with being demoted and a star taken off his lapel if he pursued this any further. But at the end of the meeting, Edgar Mitchell was there and some other folks. And I said, we do need help from men like you who are not part of this corrupt enterprise. And he says, what I have found is that the group has technologies that can do circles around my B-2 stealth bomber. And that's the best thing I know about. And I am outgunned and outmanned and outfunded by this covert group. Now, this is in the conference room for the Admiral, the head of intelligence joint staff, J2. And I think, well, that may be, but you have the rule of law. And he said, I can't act unless the Secretary of Defense and the President authorize me on something like this. But they didn't want to, because they were afraid. They were terrified. So the difference now is that there is a law that was passed that the U.S. Congress has to get to the bottom of it. The people who are assigned to do it, that the public doesn't know about, that I know about, are actually making great progress. And they now have the mandate. But how this plays out, obviously, it's to be determined.
Well, last note, then let's dive in. Since I'm going to go with that one more question. Are things like crop circles examples of ETs trying to help us wake up, say, hey, we're out here?
In the early days, most of them were legit. I'd say now there's probably 80% that are hoaxed or made. But the ones that are the real ones, let's talk about the legit ones, all right? The ones that are the legitimate ones are, in fact, ETs using transdimensional physics, communicating, but without words or a language, but the symbols, the shapes themselves activate consciousness. It's like a mandala. It's like so that's the best way, because I've been since '92. I've gone to England and gone into these crop circles, and our logo, this triangle, was we remote viewed and communicated with ETs and showed this symbol to the ETs, and that within hours in a field near us, this crop circle appeared. It was a CE5 crop circle. That's how our logo came about. A lot of people don't know that story. It's a cool story. So yeah, I think it's very much a type of communication, but we think very linearly in words and string of words and thought. These are ones that are sort of, if you just look at them and in a kind of quiet meditative state, eyes open, they have an effect. So it's almost a deeper level of consciousness activation, just like looking and staring at a mandala.
And that makes sense to me. When you're looking at something, we'll call it light language. We'll call it, what I like to say is, language is not my first language. There's something beyond the spoken word.
Right. It's deeper. It's symbols and archetype forms that activate deeper levels of consciousness and sacred geometry and things of this sort.
So would you mind leading us in a meditation? I won't call it to call in. We will not do that.
No. 1-800 call ET or something. No, anyway, I'm teasing you.
So, well, if you want to, if you want to really have fun, I could bring out the rooster for the meditation.
There you go. Why not? No, let's do that. We can close our eyes, and I'll just do a short meditation with folks. So let's all close our eyes. And take some nice deep breaths in with your nose and out with your mouth. In with your nose and out with your mouth. And with each inward breath, you see your consciousness expanding and light filling your mind and your body. And with each exhalation, you become relaxed, centered, peaceful. And in this peace, begin to breathe normally, but watch the breath very quietly. And as the breath goes in and out, become aware of the conscious mind watching the breath. And so become aware of the awareness, the pure state of consciousness, watching the breath, hearing my voice, perceiving your own self. How is it that your own consciousness can perceive itself? And now become aware that that quiet, deep consciousness is in fact universal, a singularity, and that my conscious awareness and yours and all that live and exist are emanating from this one unbounded, pure mind. And it is never divisible, and it is always a singularity. And so it reflects within our own soul and individuality. And we may trap it there, or our individuality may open to the vast ocean that in fact is the true self, the true nature of the conscious mind within. And so feel that everyone around you and everything around you is in fact awake. And while unique, the consciousness is one and the same. And in this state of divine oneness and peace, allow your mind to expand upward into space effortlessly. And you do not need to leave your body, because you now acknowledge that the conscious mind whereby you are awake is omnipresent, not limited by space or time, infinite. And so on the wings of this great soul of infinite mind, you can gaze around the earth and into space and invite any extraterrestrial beings or their spacecraft or their worlds, if they wish to show you, into your consciousness and awareness. And so as we let go of the boundaries of space and time, we can traverse the cosmos free as a bird on the wings of the infinite self, beyond space and time, this infinite and eternal light of consciousness. And if we see an extraterrestrial person or persons or world or spacecraft, invite them with respect and with honor and love and oneness to come to your location and to interact with you and your people for the purpose of creating a time of universal peace on earth and in the heavens, because that is the time that has arrived. And ask yourself and your higher aspect to have the strength to put yourself at service to this time of enlightenment and universal peace. And if with a pure heart and with the light of oneness and love, you commit to the path of service, these civilizations and peoples will guide you and help you every step of the way and always be with you, whether it is in 3D or a higher dimension. And so as we do this, we see that the universe actually has no ending in space or time. And so the vast and infinite self of pure consciousness and the creation itself are infinite and one. And so we ask the Great Spirit to guide us and to bless us. And we gaze upon the earth with kindness and love and ask that the earth be healed and the people of this planet be coming together as one people in the universe. And we see the earth transformed with new science and technology, but first with a new consciousness of oneness and peace, a consciousness that transcends all the fractures and divisions, where we realize we are all one in spirit, and all intelligent life, near and far, are one with us in this state of enlightenment and the oneness of universal peace. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you. This has been
Thank
brilliant,
you.
Stephen. One last thing popped up while we did that. Are there ETs that are already living amongst us?
Oh, well, I've been accused of worse. Yeah, that's a long discussion because, in fact, we are they and they are us. And this gets into a conversation about consciousness, fractals, intelligent life. But in the sense that most people would think of it, they have had a presence on the earth, but they're not at, Walmart buying tchotchkes with folks and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
I'm silly. All right, thank you. Good seeing you again.
For everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun. Definitely get involved in CE5 today. Get to the mass gathering. Do it online. Do it any way you can. But get that love out there and let us be diplomats of love to the universe, through the universe, from the universe, for the universe, and above and beyond all else, shine bright. Woohoo! What a brilliant and most important interview. Wow, 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 wow. On that note, get automatic writing. Start communicating with spirit. Start communicating with beings on the other side. Start diving into consciousness. We need you doing this, and we need you doing it now. Go to automaticwriting.com and, of course, become a mystic. Join our School of Mystics at inspirenationuniversity.com. Here's a link to the next amazing video. Big thumbs up if you like this. Click the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of upcoming shows, YouTube premieres, live events with me. Love you guys so, so much. Shine bright. Woohoo! How does it get any better than this? Gotta go rescue the rooster now.